The previous basket is under review.
Welcome into another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf here. Take you back through the first full week of actual games that counted. Very, very exciting week. Since the season is getting underway, got to make sure that I ask all of you, encourage all of you, to subscribe to Basket Under Review, the Basket Under Review Discord. Get access to all of the paywalled content at basketunderreview.com and access to the Discord, which features Shirley Donovan's insights and intel, and also I think we're at 6,500 members of the Discord, roughly right around there, give or take some. I haven't checked the exact number, but you have that large of a community of just insane college basketball fans who a lot of lively discussions throughout the weeks. All these games were going on, which was very exciting. If you're a college basketball fan, if you're a college basketball sicko, that is the place to be. Can't encourage it enough. $10 a month. Subscribe to the Basket Under Review Discord. You get all of that. So we're going to go back through some of the big games from this past week. Going to be a little bit relegated to Mondays and Tuesdays action because Wednesdays and Thursday was a little light. We will get to that maybe a little bit later. We are not going to talk about Florida, Arizona. For all things on that game, you got to check out the Scout Team, a Basket Under Review YouTube channel. Kevin Sweeney and Eric Fawcett did a deep dive on just that game. And they are two of the smartest basketball minds you can find. Highly recommend you go check that out. So when you're done listening to this, go over and watch the episode of Scout Team that was posted on Thursday. Elite stuff there from those two. So Matthew, we're going to start with the game that was after Florida, Arizona. It was BYU and Villanova. BYU won 71-66. Perhaps not as impressive of a victory for BYU as we would have anticipated it being, but the Cougars get the win nonetheless. What did you learn from both sides from this game?
I don't want to come off and start like a complete Debbie Downer, but quite honestly, I think for BYU, this was the worst case scenario of what a win could look like. Obviously, the worst case scenario is a loss, and they did win, but they had 50 of their 71 points from their big three of AJ DeBonsa, Rob Wright, and Richie Saunders, and they had 7 points from their bench. That is an equation that is going to get them into trouble this year. They have to find production outside of their big three. Obviously, Kebaketa is a lead on the glass, but to only take 5 shots in 24 minutes, to only play 24 minutes, someone that we were hoping would have a little bit of upped minutes this year after sharing the front court with Fus Traore last year. That just didn't happen in this one. And they just need bench production. Like, obviously, Villanova's nowhere near as talented, and like we talked about this last episode, but they outscored the bench. I believe it was 38-7. So there's your score right there. That's why this is a 5-point game. In a world where BYU is deeper, maybe Nate Pickens comes back, the UC Riverside transfer, and makes an impact, but like you can't account for too much in that particular instance. Like, you've got to find more than what you have with that big three, or there's an inherent ceiling on this roster.
The BYU aspect of this is interesting because you would have liked to have seen more. At the same time, right, this is the first real action for a team that has a lot of new guys. I know they returned some key players. Richie Saunders and Kebaketa were the two main ones, and both of them played pretty well in this game, at least what you would expect them to do by and large in this game. But like, Rob Wright's got the ball in his hands all the time. AJ DeBonsa is going to be a focal point. You have to figure out how to work those guys in. And you got to build some chemistry. And I think you saw, like, yeah, it's not going to be a perfect final product on opening night. The goal is for that to be in March, but there are growing pains that are going to happen here for BYU. The other side of things, and this is another thing that we talked about on a Monday's episode, like, Kevin Willard's a really good coach. Mm-hmm. He's had awesome defenses everywhere he's been. Like, you can point to his track record at Seton Hall, what Seton Hall was before him, what Seton Hall turned into after him. You can point to his track record at Maryland, and I know that ended poorly, mishandled, let's say. But what Maryland,
they were good.
They were a Sweet 16 team, right? There was talk about him knowing he was probably leaving. What if they made the Final Four? Yeah. Like, that was a conversation that was happening in March. What Maryland was before him, and we'll see what Maryland was after him. But game one under Buzz Williams for the Terrapins was a closer than you would like contested against Coppin State. I know Maryland will get better, I would anticipate, but like, this is a good coach who's going to have Villanova, I think, better than maybe preseason projections suggest. They showed some of this during exhibition season as well. Like they're just going to be a tough defensive first team, going to be a tough out you have to beat. And I think if you're BYU, like, yes, they did not look great. I think there are legitimate reasons to at least worry about BYU a little bit more than we did coming in, right? But that's kind of test you want at the start, right? You need somebody who's going to kind of muck it up a little bit and make you work for it. And I think that's what Villanova did.
Yeah, I mean, Villanova had 4 total field goals from their starting backcourt trio of Tyler Perkins, Caden Lewis, and Devin Askew. Obviously, Devin Askew's coming back from injury and didn't really seem like he should have been playing in that game.
No.
Caden Lewis got benched down the stretch, which was very interesting considering he was very highly regarded as their best player. And their second leading scorer was Chris Jeffrey, who was like a 3-star composite 24/7 recruit as a freshman, true freshman. So the fact that they were in that game late, that they were leading with under 7 minutes left, obviously some of it was just Bryce Lindsey catching absolute fire from deep, and he's an awesome shooter. I think everyone kind of knew that. To be in the game against a really good BYU team with kind of how things unfolded, Villanova is going to win some scrappy games, and in a Big East where the bottom is pretty bad, looking at Xavier and Seton Hall specifically, like there are some wins on the table for Villanova this year.
I think there are. Like this to me looked more like a mid-tier Big East team than one that's going to be a little bit more toiling towards the bottom, and that's even without taking the rest of the Big East into consideration. The other big game from this week was Duke and Texas. Duke got the 75-60 victory over the Longhorns. Matthew, my note for this just is that it was a yucky game. It was a gross watch.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was not a good game to watch. I have nothing else to say. Like, I was sitting on my couch watching this game, and I was like, get me interested in something going on here. I think at the end of the day, these were two teams that kind of played out how we expected it to. Like Texas, we were talking about how worried we were about the point guard situation, how Jordan Pope is a scorer and Kendall Weaver is a defender. And sure enough, they had 6 assists the entire game. And that is not a number that you can really live with. Obviously, Duke's going to switch a lot and make you play a lot of iso ball. But 6 assists is really not something that Texas should be looking forward to moving forward. They have some offensive pieces, and defensively they're solid. They did an awesome job on Cameron Boozer, especially in the first half, 0 points. And then for Duke, it's kind of the same thing. Like, there's just no on-ball pop on this team. There are guys that are good positional size, that can hit open shots, that can like bully ball their way to the basket, especially Cameron Boozer, and then even some of the guards like for their position. But just like, who's beating you off the bounce? This is exactly what I said before this game, but I left feeling the exact same way. There's just a bunch of, toolsy basketball players. Like, if you swapped Nick Kaminya and Jordan Pope, I actually think both teams end up getting way better because now Texas has more spacing and Duke has an on-ball creator because they just don't have on-ball juice right now.
That's an interesting trade idea. That honestly is not an awful one. I kind of like that. But yeah, like you saw the lack of, I like your word, lack of pop from Duke's perimeter. Like they are almost reliant on a hot stretch from Isaiah Evans from 3, which maybe you can rely on that because he's an elite shooter. And when he gets hot, like he can hit anything. But you kind of are relying on that stretch to carry your perimeter. And then with Cameron Boozer doing what he does inside. Now, I do have a point about just something we're going to monitor moving forward about Cameron Boozer that I detail in the Rauf report that's up on basketballreview.com. So make sure you go check that out. He's played 2 games now against power conference teams, Texas and Tennessee. He's got double-doubles in both. Shooting percentages in both were yucky, like just real bad. And if there was any negatives about Cam Boozer as a high school prospect coming into college projections and projected to the pros is the fact he's not like absurdly tall. He's, I would say, good positional size, not great, and good athleticism, not great. And he's got so much skill, but it becomes a matter of like, okay, how do you finish around length? How do you finish around more physical players? And that, at least, again, through 2 games, I'm not writing anything off about Cam Boozer. At this point, it is way too early, and he's still been way too productive. But if you want to monitor something moving forward, I think that's one thing that's got to improve. And if that improves, I think Duke's offense gets much better, right?
Yeah. The thing is, he's not a twitchy athlete, right? He's a
Correct.
powerful athlete, but he's not going to jump over you. He's not going to blow by you. He's going to go through you. And obviously that will work in stretches, but if a defense can really key in on him and they're not worried about anyone else driving, then you're able to kind of shade him with the big, and then that's where everyone else just comes into play, and his passing comes into play. His passing was excellent, especially against Tennessee. I think he had 6 assists, just 2 assists to 3 turnovers in this one.
Yeah, I think at this point, Duke is a defense-first team. Like the size they have, for all the lack of offensive skill, particularly on the perimeter we just talked about, defensively with their size and athleticism, like they're going to be really, really good again on that end. And
third in height.
Yeah, they leaned into that in the second half of this game too. Like kind of shut the water off for Texas. I think that's kind of the blueprint for Duke, at least for the next month or two, as some of the freshmen get acclimated and they figure out what works for them offensively and what doesn't. This is a team that's really got to lean into their defensive identity. I think they can be, not Houston good, but one of the better defensive teams in the country, for sure. There were a lot of other games, obviously, that took place this week. There were over 100 on Monday night alone. So I just want to do a little bit rapid fire, other takeaways that you picked up from games that happened this week.
One word: freshman. That's literally the name of the game in this year of college basketball. And like, I would go so far as to say the teams that are transfer portal all-star teams are going to really struggle. And the teams that have a lot of youth, whether that's freshmen or maybe a mid-major team that added a high major freshman from last year that's dropping down, that is where all of the upside, that's where all the diamonds in the rough are, because just you think about the last 4 years of 5 years of classes. The super seniors dominated college basketball, and they are all gone, except for guys that played in JUCO, so they're coming from a different perspective to begin with. Teams that have good freshmen, and you're even seeing it, like I project all my rosters and 9-man depth charts coming into the season, the amount of mid-major teams even that are starting 1, 2, 3 freshmen, and they're seeming like their best players. Part of it is the freshman class is great, and I don't want to take away from that. A lot of them have performed excellent in the first couple of days, but what's a bigger takeaway is that a lot of teams kind of went back to the well of, transfer portal gets have been the success, right? Without remembering the fact that we lost, in terms of effective talent, probably 50% of effective transfers because the fifth years are gone. So teams where their rotation is 9 men, juniors and seniors, mid-major all-star teams moving up a level for their final year of hoop, that's just so much lower of a ceiling of archetype this year than in previous years. And I think as the season goes on, you're going to see teams that are younger, that have taken chances on guys, that aren't taking retreads, are going to be the ones that are better off because of it.
That's a great point by you. The freshmen really dominated it, certainly the first 2 nights of action. I think this is as deep of a freshman class producing quality as we've seen in some time. I think this is talent-wise a very deep freshman class too. But to your point, there is a lot of opportunity for them given the fact that the super seniors and a lot of the COVID guys are gone. In that respect, I need to shout out Montana Wheeler for Bradley. I was at those early morning game for the Field 68 tip-off in Rock Hill. He was awesome. And the stat line won't show it. He is somebody who, like, in a year or two, we're going to talk about being an impact player on a power conference team. And I hate to automatically assume that he's going away from Bradley. I hope he doesn't. That's just kind of the ecosystem we live in now. That's a name to remember, partially because it's Montana Wheeler, and that's a dope name. But also, he's really good.
And he's not big.
No.
He's not a big player whatsoever, but very, very effective player. And yeah, definitely, like, Bradley just kind of churns these guys in and out every year. They had Duke Dean last year. Jaquan Johnson's supposed to be the guy this year. And you know who his brother is, right?
I don't know if I do.
10 of Wheeler's brother is Severe Wheeler.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I guess I was listening to the broadcast and you weren't because you were at the game, but they did check that out on the broadcast.
I went into that game completely blind and was like, "Oh, Bradley's got a lot of like 3 or 4 of these guys who were 6 foot or smaller and just built like fire hydrants, just absolute tanks." And one of them was Montana Wheeler.
Yeah,
and he was very, very good. I was also at. I drove from that to NC State's opener, Will Wade's first game as NC State's head coach, which. Selling out a game in a 19,000 person arena against NC Central, that fan base has been desperate for a winner, and Will Wade has energized that. they're using Darion Williams as like a legitimate point guard option for them. And Texas Tech did that in spurts last year. But the way he navigated that this game, now it was NC Central. He had 8 assists in this game against NC Central. He only did that 4 times last year. And it was like Darion Williams to bring the ball up the court. Darion Williams are putting at the center of the zone NC Central tried to play. He was a focal point for them from a facilitation standpoint. Now, he got plenty of shots too. I think he had 11 points and 2 assists and 2 rebounds in the first 3 minutes of the game. Like NC Central called a timeout a minute and a half in, and he'd already hit 3 threes. Like it was absurd. But the way his impact on the game from a passing perspective was point guard-esque. And so if you get that from your 4-man, who's also one of the best players in the country and best scorers in the country, like I left that feeling really good about what he could be for NC State. And we went into the season talking about Cam Boozer being like, yeah, ACC Player of the Year. He's the front runner, and you got a couple other guys who are coming back. Darion Williams was the preseason Player of the Year, and I think he reminded everybody why he should be the favorite for Player of the Year in the ACC. That was a really, really awesome performance from him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Will Wade wants to be big, and if you can play big and have skill from those big guys, all the more power to him.
We got to get to previews for the games coming up this weekend, because there's as lackluster as the slate Wednesday and Thursday were. The slate of games this weekend is awesome. And luckily, a good number of them are not on ESPN. So if you're a YouTube TV customer, you can still watch all of them. But before we get into that, any words on the Mountain West? Because the Mountain West had Boise State losing to Hawaii Pacific, had UNLV losing to UT Martin, and had Fresno losing to USC Upstate. I know Fresno's not very good, but like the start of the season for the Mountain West, that could be a problem. This is the last season of the Mountain West before the Pac-12 kind of split off deal. And there were, I think, pretty high hopes going into the season about that conference being what it has been the last couple of years. That was not a good start.
Air Force got killed by Belmont. Yeah, it wasn't particularly good across the board. San Jose State lost pretty easily to Utah. Utah is not supposed to be a very good team this year. I mean, them and the American lost a ton.
Oh, yeah.
So expect there to be some growing pains in those two conferences.
Yeah, speaking of the American, Memphis, one of the preseason favorites, just now putting in their offense and defense, according to Penny Hardaway. Just now. That happened this week. Yeah. Anyway, games this weekend. Big one, Friday night, 7 o'clock. This game is on ESPN, so find another way to watch this game if you are a YouTube TV customer. I am one, if you can't tell. I'm a little bitter about this. But Kansas going and playing at UNC. It's a whiteout game for North Carolina. That's not something they typically do, but a whiteout game for the Tar Heels. Big game. Darren Peterson also going up against Caleb Wilson, who's had a pretty good start to his North Carolina career. What are some big things to watch for in this game in your mind?
Yeah, these are two teams that have, I'm almost ready to say that Caleb Wilson is a superstar. I think he's North Carolina's best player. Obviously, it was one game, and it was against Central Arkansas. But I think he's their best player. And so the question really is, if we know what Darren Peterson is, and we have a good idea about what Caleb Wilson is, if Henry Visar and Flory Badunga are two, top-tier centers, then who's the third guy on each roster? Is Seth Trimble going to take an extra leap against high major competition after the last couple of years? We've sort of been stepping towards it. Who's the third best player in Kansas? I continue to wonder this. Is it Trey White? Is it Melvin Council, the scoring guard from St. Bonaventure? Whichever team has a third guy step up, I think ends up winning this. I also think it's just going to be an awesome basketball game. It'll be fast. It'll be electric. This will be the opposite of Duke, Texas. This will be one that you want to keep watching.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think Kansas has the best player in this game, and Darren Peterson. That's not a question. I wonder how far down the list you go before you get to Flory Badunga, and then how far you go after that to get to a third guy for Kansas. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, this is a game where those guys for Kansas, the quote-unquote others, the support players, I think, step up for Kansas. They have to win this game. The other side of this is I think this will be the opportunity and the game where North Carolina announces themselves as being like a really good team this season. I've been in on them coming back this year. I think the front court is really, really good. I think the back court has been better than people are giving them credit for. There are still, Kansas is going to be the first real test, right? But Kyan Evans has looked really good in the point guard role for them. Seth Trimble has looked like the guy who was a breakout candidate the first month or two of last season before he kind of fell back in. So all of that, I think, is in a good spot. If you just look back at Hubert Davis's track record, the 4 seasons he's been there, he's had 2 good years and 2 bad years. So I'll say the good Hubert and the bad Hubert, right? Good Hubert was largely defined by having really good 4 men, having really good power forwards. Right? They had the national title year where Brady Manick became a cult hero. And then the year they won the ACC, Harrison Ingram went from being kind of cast off at Stanford to being an NBA draft pick. The 2 off years, there was Pete Nance that did not work out the way people wanted. And you could pick your guy from last year because there was no front court for UNC last year. UNC has gone from having no front court to having what I think is a really, really good one, with Caleb Wilson, as you mentioned, being their best player. Henry Vasar is awesome. Jaren Stevenson's awesome. You got some depth behind those guys as well. Like, I think this UNC team is really, really good. Really, really good. And I think that this is a perfect opportunity for them to really announce themselves as being that in a marquee spot on a Friday night on ESPN.
And if they don't win, then either they're very overrated and you're wrong, or Darren Peterson's the greatest player of all time.
Which, hey, he might have the best season in college this year. He's a National Player of the Year candidate for a good reason. If we flip over to Saturday, we're going to get the slate started at noon. Alabama goes on and plays St. John's. Can't wait for that one. Nate Oates, Rick Pitino. That game is going to be on FS1 at noon. What are you looking for in this one?
I will be there, so I'm excited for that. All right. Finally, a marquee game in New York City. I've got to go down. So what I'm looking forward to that one is what's Alabama's roster looking like. Aiden Holloway didn't play in their tune-up opener game. Neither did, I believe, Aiden Sherrill also missed that one. So down a couple of guys. Aiden Sherrill did play. I'm blanking on the second guy they missed, but they were down 2, including Aiden Holloway, who's their starting backcourt mate alongside LeBaron Philon. And they didn't blow out North Dakota, which to me is a little bit concerning. This is an Alabama roster and a team with Nate Oates' super quick up-tempo style that has made a habit of whooping bad teams whenever they're given the opportunity to do so. And North Dakota, no offense, bad team. It was Latrell Wrightsell who was also out of this game, along with Jaleel Bethea, who we knew, and Keaton Bristow, who's also going to be an impact piece. So they were down 2 to 3 guys that could have played in this game. So they're, not at full strength, and the athleticism is a little bit down for this Alabama team. They're obviously going to want to run and gun. Only 74 possessions against North Dakota is below what they were projected to in this game by KenPom, and that's not something you typically say with the Nate Oates squad. So with the St. John's team that's going to try to grind them down, obviously they played really fast in their game against Quinnipiac, but with the 3-headed monster of Dylan Mitchell, Bryce Hopkins, and Zubi Ejiofor, who have now finally all started at once. It only took 0 games for that to happen. If Alabama can't win in transition, then there's a chance that they get beat pretty badly down low.
Yeah, this is I think, good clash of styles in that sense, or good clash of personnel, I guess I should say, because the styles are going to be pretty up-tempo, but you have a perimeter-oriented team in Alabama versus a more interior-oriented team in St. John's. You have a really good offense, or what should be, in Alabama, because they always are, versus what should be an elite defense, because they always are, under Pitino and St. John's, right? I think this is a really good clash to see what really works in those aspects and what doesn't, because both of those sides are going to lean on their respective strengths to carry them. Right? There are flaws on both sides, so the strength of their strengths, how good they are at those strengths, are going to really dictate how far they can go this season. It's a good early test to see kind of where that's at. Like if I'm looking at this, if St. John's guards do enough and hold up against Alabama to where the front court can kind of take over and do what they need to do, if they do enough, St. John's guards are not going to be perfect this season at all. But if they can do it enough against a team like Alabama, I think then the Final Four aspirations, the Final Four picks, national title picks, make a lot more sense, and you feel a lot more confident in those. But there's also the chance that it proves to be a total liability. Alabama runs all over them, owns the perimeter, and it is truly worst case scenario for the Red Storm. I think it's interesting to see from a St. John's perspective, just how that unfolds.
I will say Alabama at full strength. I think that they get this done, but a shorthanded Bama team. St. John's should win this game. If they don't, then I think that there's some questions to be raised, unless Bama gets a lot healthier.
For sure. Night game, Saturday, 7 o'clock on Fox. Arkansas at Michigan State. Another fun matchup. Big thought for you. Well, what are you looking for?
If Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas are good in their first college road game in a raucous environment in East Lansing, Arkansas will win this game pretty easily. The only path for Michigan State winning this is stifling those two, because the perimeter pop outside of those two is very limited. Not a lot of shooting on the roster. They're huge and they're athletic, but that's the only thing Michigan State really is. So they can match that. If Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff are drilling threes like they did in the exhibition slate and in game one against Southern, they'll be just fine here. The biggest concern for Michigan State only beating Colgate by 11 wasn't the offense. It was okay. It was the fact that they allowed 1 point per possession to Colgate at home, and Colgate only had 6 free throws all game. So to dominate, they won the free throw battle 37-6, and they barely escaped over Colgate. This is a team that's not going to be able to blow out anyone, but they can keep Arkansas at arm's length, and they can win this if the freshmen have a bad game in their first road tilt. But what we've learned so far in the early season is you shouldn't count against this freshman class because it's so good.
Yeah. This game to me is going to dictate what the hype train around Arkansas should be. Tom Izzo is going to try and muck this game up, right? With his roster, the way he typically plays, and with the level of defense you usually expect from Michigan State, right? They are going to make things very difficult on Arkansas. And as you mentioned, this is the first time that Acuff and Thomas and several others are going to be going into this kind of environment, facing this kind of test, facing like athletes in this scenario. If Acuff and Thomas pass this and are as good as they have been, like I have been an Arkansas detractor. I was not a huge fan of the Arkansas team last year. I will be all in on this team being awesome this year. And that, like, if Acuff's ability to get downhill, which I've already said I think is perfect for John Calipari's system, with a guy who just has no conscience like Malik Thomas, it's a bigger Rob Dillingham essentially. I think you can buy Arkansas being really, really good and one of the best teams in the SEC this season. On the Michigan State side, it's the same kind of thing. But what's your thought about Arkansas?
I was about to say, but they only run 9 deep, and Michigan State will attack the free throw line.
Yes.
They will get to the basket.
Partially because that's the only way Michigan State can score. That's the only way Michigan State can score. And the other side of this, too, is I think it lays out what expectations should be for Michigan State this season. I think you feel more optimistic, obviously, if you beat Arkansas, as you would anyway. But there are real questions about this team offensively. And we have talked about it a number of times on this show and off this show about how there's no pop to the team offensively. They feel so limited. If you're able to beat Arkansas while being as limited as they are, I think you can talk yourself into Tom Izzo being Tom Izzo, working his magic and getting the most out of this team, and them still being something this year. If they lose at home, if they lose potentially badly at home, then I think we start having some conversations about what the rest of the season looks like for Michigan State too.
A fun stat, Michigan State against Colgate, is if that game were to have taken place last year, it would have been the 4th worst 3-point percentage allowed the entire season. So maybe that was just Colgate getting hot, or maybe this team is not even as good defensively as they were last year.
It'll be interesting to see. Well, Arkansas game will tell us a lot about that from the Spartans' perspective. Late night, Saturday, 10:30, ESPN2, Oklahoma is going and playing Gonzaga at Gonzaga. Our first real look at both these teams. I'm excited to see this from an Oklahoma perspective, because what they did during the preseason was they beat Texas Tech in a secret scrimmage, and they beat Wisconsin in an exhibition, 2 ranked teams. And Porter Moser, throughout his tenure at Oklahoma, while the end results of each season have not always been the way you would want them to be, the non-conferences have generally been awesome. So, like, are we getting that again with Oklahoma, who has some upside and, again, has shown some real potential in the preseason? Or does Gonzaga get things done the way that Mark Few always seems to get things done up there in Spokane?
What I saw was Oklahoma losing by 5 with 18 minutes left to St. Francis of Pennsylvania, which
There's
is
also that.
Obviously after that they went on an insane 32-3 run and absolutely broke the game open, but St. Francis is one of the 10 or 15 worst teams in the country. To be losing in the second half by 2 possessions, very concerning. There was a lot not to like with Oklahoma's. Obviously, maybe they're looking forward, looking ahead to the Gonzaga game, traveling cross country. I get that. That's fine. Meanwhile, Gonzaga looked absolutely dominant against the Texas Southern team that was a little hurt, but team that I think might win the SWAC this year. They played Graham Ike and Braden Huff together. We were thinking they had to do it, and they did do it, but they also only made 7 threes. Almost half of them came from Adam Miller, who's one of the streakier shooters in the country. And if you're getting 4 non-Adam Miller threes a game, you're going to have trouble beating top-end competition that can match your size and athleticism. Gonzaga is way deeper than Oklahoma. If they can dominate the free throw line, get Mo McGee into foul trouble, which is one of the easiest things to do in the entire country, then they have a chance to just dominate down low. If for whatever reason McGee stays on the court and doesn't get into foul trouble, Kai Rogers was out for Oklahoma, their backup big. Gonzaga has a really good chance to dominate the interior.
100%. Big game on Sunday we're going to talk about here is Indiana at Marquette, 1 o'clock on ESPN. First real test for Daniel DeVries and this Indiana team against a Marquette team that also faces questions because everybody's stepping into new roles. Everybody's coming back for that team, but new roles. What are you looking at in this game? What's gonna decide the winner in your mind?
Look, Indiana looked good. Indiana looked very good in their win over Alabama A&M. 23 assists, 10 made threes, 77 percent from 2-point range. But if I'm just going to go off of my large takeaway from, the top of the show is with Indiana, it's a bunch of, high mid-major, low-high major retreads, a bunch of seniors that have kind of been around the block. Whereas, you look on the other side, and then you have a Marquette team that's entirely internal. A lot of guys jumping up in role, guys that were stuck behind fifth-year guys that have a chance to really blossom in their first year in bigger roles. 2 very, very different roster builds. And so as much as I want to look at Marquette starting off, fine this season, not blowing their bye games away, and then Indiana just laying waste to Alabama A&M, I want to go back to my previous thought and consider how teams that are very mid-major transfer heavy have kind of struggled early on, and wonder if perhaps Marquette might end up being a team that looks better in this type of environment.
They very well might be, right? And I think this is our chance to really see what Marquette looks like. I think, too, this is our chance to, again, gauge Indiana, see how far they have to go and what works, because this team in that opener, there was beautiful ball movement. They shot the 3 well. They got a lot of open looks from 3 that they wanted to. That's what they want to do this season. What better way to find out how you're stacking up in that area than against a Marquette defense that's typically incredibly stout on the perimeter, right? And as you mentioned, they're bringing a lot of guys back, step up in roles, but the defense is still going to be there for Marquette. It has been since Shaka Smart's been their head coach. That clash of Indiana's offense on the perimeter, Marquette's defense on the perimeter, to me is what's going to dictate this game and tell us a lot about, I think, the trajectory of both teams this season.
Yeah, for sure. I think this will be, perhaps out of all the games, the one that will tell us the most about where this team stands.
Yeah. Going back to last week, our picks, I went 3-1, the one loss being Arizona's victory over Florida. We both picked the Gators to win that one. You also, I will say this as a asterisk, to make sure we did not have all the exact same picks, you were nice enough to take the bullet and pick Villanova, which almost worked out in your favor. But that has you at 2-2 going into this week. I'll give you first crack. We'll go back at the top here. Kansas and North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Who do you think?
North Carolina.
I'm going to go North Carolina as well. I think this UNC team is, again, really good. And I think this is the game they show that. Alabama or St. John's?
I've been nothing but not nice to St. John's all offseason. However, I think this is a game that they end up winning.
I think this is a game they end up winning as well. I promise we're not going to pick the same the whole way through. I have one that I know I'm picking opposite you. I'll go ahead and say that. Being in New York, I think St. John's wins this. I think they get kind of the win to stamp the hype, and Rick Pitino kind of needs this. I think he kind of gets this.
And now I'll be cheering for St. John's because my record is on the line for it.
There you go. Arkansas, Michigan State.
I'm going Michigan State. I think home court, first road game for Arkansas and their 2-star freshmen. Somehow, some way, Michigan State's going to find a way.
The only way Michigan State wins this game to me is if I'm going to say Cohen Carr, but I know you're a Jackson Kohler guy. So if one of them goes for 20 plus.
Can it be all free throws?
It can be all free throws. I don't think that happens, though. I think Arkansas gets the win, and I think I become much more in on Arkansas than I have been. I think Acuff and Thomas do the thing. I think it'll be a good win for the Razorbacks. Oklahoma or Gonzaga?
Gonzaga. They're going to dominate the inside, and Mo Wiggy is going to get into foul trouble.
I'm going to go with the Sooners because I think Oklahoma's going to dominate the outside, and Porter Moser's got some weird non-conference magic. And we're gonna ride that. It's gonna probably come back and bite me, but we need to be different too, and it's fun.
Yeah, sure. By all means.
Yeah, I'm riding a Nigel Pack rebound season.
Okay. He can't rebound, but I guess he can rebound.
He can rebound his season, but not the ball.
Yeah.
Indiana, Marquette close things out.
I'm going to take Marquette. I think that the experience over the transfer heavy team. I just got to go with my takeaway there.
I'm going to go Indiana. And your point about the mid-major up transfers, I think, is very well taken. And I think that's, by and large, a point we need to be looking at throughout the rest of the season. I think Indiana's fit pretty well. I do think there are some depth questions that were not there. This, I think, is more so about how I feel about Marquette. I think Marquette will be okay this season. I do not think they are anything special. I think there are going to be real growing pains. Talk about Michigan State's lack of pop. I think Marquette's got a real lack of pop too. They're going to be good defensively, but I think just 3-point shooting variance that Indiana can provide. I think they're going to go on one stretch in this game that ultimately proves to be the difference. So I'll take the Hoosiers, even on the road there. It's good. Three of the five different picks. I like it.
Somebody is going to really run away with it this week, and I'm hoping it's me.
I hope it's not, but it'll be good content for the show either way. We'll be back on Monday to discuss our picks, see who won, break down all these games, and any other major takeaways from the weekend. Again, loaded weekend slate, good weekend to be kind of burrowed in on your couch there as it starts to get cold. I think it's been cold in New York for a while. It's just starting to get real cold in North Carolina.
Well, it's the time. It's dark. It's cold. It's college basketball season.
It feels like basketball season, baby. I love it. We'll be back on Monday to break down all those games and more, and also look ahead to the big games from the week ahead. It's Matthew Winick. I'm Brian Rauf. We'll talk to you then.